So if Joe Biden wins the Democratic nomination, and then he goes on to lose the general election, I think that what I'm about to show you guys now would be one of the biggest reasons for the loss. Now, let me be clear up front. A lot of the polls right now are showing that Trump and Biden are pretty much tied. You know, some polls have Biden up a little bit. Some polls even have Trump up a point. But I will say, I do think Trump is an easier opponent than almost any other Republican. And the reason I say that is because there are 91 criminal charges against him. He's in serious danger with those cases. I mean, even if you put aside the attempt to defraud the U.S. government and overthrow the election, and even if you put aside a majority of the charges, I think there's a slam dunk case with the classified and top secret documents, and everybody and their mother is flipping on him, and they're going to tell their story. And so I think he's in real trouble. So in other words, I think Joe Biden would be a favorite in that scenario come election day. But having said that, you are still rolling the dice to some extent, right? I mean, even if it's like a 60-40 proposition on election day that Joe Biden wins, 40%, if you've ever played poker, you know 40% happens quite a bit, right? For the Republicans in particular, it's not just Trump's legal troubles, but it's also the extremism on abortion, which is hurting them. It's also the fact that there's so many candidates who are election deniers that's hurting them. There's a plethora of issues which makes them sort of uniquely unappealing in a sense at the moment. But in a hypothetical scenario where Biden does lose, I think this could be one of the things you point the finger at, because this is, when you see these polls that, people are like, okay, yeah, I know the unemployment rate's low, I know inflation has dropped, but I'm still struggling massively. They're not making that up, right? Like, that's real. And this is one of the reasons why. So this is from The Lever. The U.S. is shrinking its social safety net. A snapshot of selected enhancement coverage from 2020 to 2023. So there has been, as you can see here, there's been an end of these programs. So the eviction ban, the extended unemployment insurance coverage, the additional unemployment insurance benefits, the foreclosure ban, the child tax credit expansion. This had cut child poverty by 40%, and now it's gone, and they're not fighting to bring it back. Now, let's be clear, every Republican is against it, and the majority of Democrats are for it, but if it's not being implemented, who's going to get blamed for that primarily? It's probably going to be Joe Biden, right? He's the president, he's overseeing it, and he didn't expand the child tax credit. That's going to hurt him. The earned income tax credit expansion, that's gone. Free school meals. Now, to be fair, there's 6 Democratic states that have done free school meals, and I think there's 9 that are in the process of doing it. And at the same time, the House Republicans are literally trying to ban any states from doing this, even if they want. There's a clear difference between Democrats and Republicans on this, but we lost the universal free school meals, which we had during COVID, we don't have now. That's going to hurt them. Emergency food aid, the student loan pause stopped. So, I think Biden has done a decent job fighting on the student loan debt reduction. He appealed the case a number of times. After the Supreme Court slapped it down when Biden used his COVID justification, he turned around and said, okay, I'll invoke the Higher Education Act and we'll try to reduce it that way. Good. That's all good. But at the same time, he also got rid of the student loan pause. And so now people are going to have to start paying it back and the interest is accruing. That's going to hurt him, right? Child care provider grants went away. The WIC increase went away. WIC is a program that they say special supplemental nutrition program for women, infants, and children. It's like baby formula and stuff like that. So all of these things were in place during the pandemic. And this actually helped a tremendous number of people. And now it's going away. Why? Probably because Biden listened to Larry Summers and he listens to all the fear-mongering about the deficit and the debt. And so now he's put himself in a precarious position. Look, guys, I'll go as far as to say this. If we didn't lose all these things, or if we had kept most of these things in place, I kind of think it would be a cakewalk for Biden to re-election, even though he barely knows where he is. Why? Because if you keep these things in place and you're helping middle-class people, poor people, working people, and your opponent has 91 criminal charges against him and he says stuff like suspend the Constitution, that is a clear distinction. I mean, I think there's already a clear distinction. This would be an even more clear distinction. And so I don't know why you would not fight, at least on some of these things, to continue them, because these were huge things. Guys, you have to understand, there was a time when Joe Biden had like a 54% approval rating. It was right when they cut those $1,400 checks, right when all this stuff was in place, because people were like, hey, I know it's rough out there. I know the pandemic is horrible, but you know what? I'm doing okay. I have this social safety that's helping me out a little bit. And now if that goes away, and that did go away, that hurts. So look, understand something, man. My job here on this show is to give you all the facts and all the policies, and you determine how you weigh it and what you think is the best argument, and how it influences how you want to vote or who you want to support and all that stuff. And I can do the list of both, right? Biden has done some great stuff with the NLRB. They're giving overtime pay to way more people. The number used to be about if you make $30,000 a year or less, you get it. Now it's up to $55,000 a year or less. That's a big increase for overtime pay for a lot of people. The NLRB did that great rule to automatically recognize unions if the boss tries to union bust. That's great. Pulled out of Afghanistan, massively reduced the drone war. You guys know this. I give you this list every day because you need to know all the facts. But you also need to know not just that we added 800,000 manufacturing jobs and that we got the PACT Act, which is health care for toxic burn pit victims who are veterans. Every Republican voted against that. The Democrats voted for that. You need to not just know about the 15% corporate minimum tax rate, which is phenomenal. You also need to know that the social safety net, which was beefed up during COVID, is now being reduced. And if I'm Joe Biden or I'm one of his advisors, I'm like, hey, you idiot. You have to at least try to push through an extension of the child tax credit, right? You have to at least try to do something like that. Because that would help colossally. It would help colossally. So, look, add this story to what I call the Biden bad column. And the Biden bad column is no Iran agreement. He said he'd get back into it. He didn't. We're still cucked to Saudi Arabia. We're still sanctioning Afghanistan. Biden's still very conservative on the border. He greenlit the Willow Project with oil drilling. He didn't fight for public option. He didn't fight for $15 minimum wage nationally. He failed to get Build Back Better through. He screwed the rail workers union. Add this to the negatives, right? And from my perspective, looking at what I think the existential threat of Trump is, a guy who says, I'm going to suspend the Constitution. I won last time. I'm going to break down all of our institutions and rebuild them in my image. I mean, the guy's literal dictator ambitions, tried to overthrow the last election. And by the way, he's got a list of policies way worse than the worst of Joe Biden, right? But I got to give you all the information. I got to give you the positives. I got to give you the negatives. And on this front, it's crazy because I really do feel like this story right here, if Joe Biden did reverse the direction he's gone in with the social safety net expansion during COVID, if he went back to the, we're going to bring back the child tax credit, the earned income tax credit expansion, the free school meals for everybody. If he did that, I think the election is game, set, match, over. I do. Even though he doesn't know where he is, even though he's 1,000 years old, even though he could barely get through a sentence. It's like the old doddering grandpa who did some decent things versus the wannabe emperor, right? That should be that should be a slam dunk. And especially with Trump, putting aside the 91 criminal charges, he destroyed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. He killed the regulations that were supposed to go against the predatory payday loan industry and dropped the court cases that they had going against them. He cut taxes for the rich. He increased drone strikes by over 400%. He assassinated a top Iranian commander and nearly sparked World War III. He tried to coup Venezuela. He says now he wants to ban socialists and communists from the country. He wants to expand the Muslim ban. He says he wants war with Mexico. He outsourced 200,000 jobs, right? He's so bad. And to Joe Biden, I would say substantively help people and go back to some of these good policies that we had during COVID, which really helped take the sting out of a late-stage capitalist hellscape, which is what we're living in right now. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.